She thought she had found her forever. A man who spoke softly, moved with elegance, and loved her with a kind of patience that made the world slow down. His name was Alexander, the kind of man every woman secretly dreamed of once in her life. He had everything: wealth carved from mystery, charm that disarmed every doubt, and eyes that promised safety. But behind those eyes, something waited, a secret he buried so deep, even he forgot what it felt like to breathe without it. On the night she said "I do," Claire believed she was walking into a fairy tale. Instead, she was stepping into a story written in shadows. Because love, when it glitters too brightly, often hides what it doesn't want you to see. So, dear listener, I ask you this: if the person you loved turned out to be someone else entirely, would you still believe in love? Or would you start to question everything you ever knew? Discover this story of love, trust, and betrayal, because Claire married a millionaire, but he hid a deep, dark secret. In a city where dreams wore silk and champagne flowed like promise, Claire worked in silence, a fashion designer with hands that spoke louder than her name ever could. She lived in a small apartment above a flower shop, stitching gowns for women who never learned her story. Every thread she sewed carried a secret wish that someday someone would see her, not just her work. That chance came on a winter evening under the chandeliers of the Harrington Hotel. A luxury gala, her first major break. She wasn't supposed to stand out, only her designs were. But fate has a strange way of revealing its favorite players. He saw her before anyone else did. A man at the edge of the crowd, tall, composed, wearing a midnight black suit that seemed made for secrets. His name was Alexander, the kind of man who spoke quietly but was heard by everyone. When he approached her, the air shifted. The noise of the gala blurred into silence. "You designed that gown?" he asked, voice smooth as smoke. Claire nodded, unsure whether to speak or breathe. That night, something began, something neither of them could name. He sent flowers the next morning, then a note. And soon, dinners became weekends, weekends became escapes. Private jets, candlelit terraces overlooking cities she'd only seen in magazines. He told her stories of his travels, of deals made in distant places, of a life so vast it could swallow time itself. She told him little, and he loved that. He said she had quiet eyes, the kind that made him forget noise ever existed. For Claire, it felt like magic. Every time he held her hand, the world steadied. Every time he smiled, her heart believed. It was fast, too fast, but love rarely waits for reason. In the reflection of his world, the marble halls, the glittering parties, the hum of power, Claire began to lose sight of where she came from. It didn't matter. She told herself it didn't need to. Because when you finally taste the life you've dreamed of, you don't ask how it was made. You just keep sipping. Do you believe in love at first sight? Or do fairy tales fade when the glitter settles? Because in that moment, Claire didn't care to question. Every warning her heart whispered was drowned out by the sound of his promises. Weeks turned to months, and when Alexander finally asked her to be his forever, it felt inevitable. The proposal wasn't public or grand. It was quiet, on a balcony under falling snow. He looked at her as though she was the only person left on Earth, and for a moment, she believed it. In that kiss beneath the snow, she thought she had found her destiny. But sometimes, destiny wears a mask. And so began the fairy tale, the dream that would soon show her just how fragile love can be when built on secrets. Love burns bright enough, it forgets the dark exists. For Claire, the world had become a dream, one stitched together by silk, champagne, and the sound of Alexander's voice, promising forever. When he surprised her with a trip to Paris, no reason, no warning, just a passport on her pillow beside a single white rose. He said only, "Pack light." The city met them with golden rain and soft laughter. They dined in secret restaurants where violins played for two, and he led her through narrow streets like a man who'd walked them in another life. He never spoke of the past, only of what was coming. A house near the sea, a future built just for them. Every moment felt cinematic, too smooth, too perfect, like a scene written to be believed. And maybe that's why she didn't see the edges fraying. On their fourth night in Paris, he took her to the base of the Eiffel Tower. It was almost midnight. The tourists had thinned, and the lights painted the sky in gold. He told her to close her eyes. When she opened them, he was on one knee. No crowd, no spectacle, just him trembling slightly, a ring glinting beneath the tower's glow. He said only, "You've given me peace, and I've been searching for that all my life." Claire's heart stopped, and then, as if the world had been waiting for her answer, she said yes. Tears, laughter, the kiss beneath falling rain, every cliché suddenly felt sacred. She didn't see the figure standing in the distance, half hidden by an umbrella, watching, still. Their return home was met with headlines, whispers, and envy. A mysterious millionaire and the woman who captured his heart. Designers offered her gowns, magazines called her the luckiest woman alive. She smiled for the cameras, but her eyes searched for him, always him. He was there, always near, but somehow always elsewhere too. She poured herself into her wedding gown, refusing to let anyone else touch the final stitches. Every seam, every pearl felt like a promise she could control. He watched her sew it, standing by the window, smoke curling from his glass of wine. He said once, "You don't have to work anymore," he said once. She smiled but didn't stop sewing. Some habits aren't about survival, they're about identity. The wedding came with clouds threatening rain, but never falling. The aisle smelled of lilies and candle smoke. His gaze didn't waver once. Neither did hers. Vows were exchanged, not in grand declarations, but in the quiet certainty of two people who believed love was enough. When he said forever, she believed him. Outside, behind the crowd, the same man stood again. Gray coat, no expression, just watching through the gate. He didn't move when the doves were released or when applause filled the air. Only when Alexander turned his head, briefly, almost instinctively, did the man vanish into the crowd. Have you ever felt like something was too perfect to be real? Like the universe handed you everything you ever wanted, only to whisper, "You'll pay for this later." As their limousine pulled away, Claire leaned against Alexander's shoulder, her hand resting on his chest. She could feel his heartbeat, steady, controlled. But behind it, a silence she couldn't name. That night, as fireworks burst across the Paris skyline, she whispered, "Promise me we'll always be this happy." He smiled, kissed her forehead, and said, softly, "Always." And as the night fell, one truth begins to form beneath the beauty. Every fairy tale has a cost. and hers was about to be collected. Every story has a turning point, the moment where the fairy tale begins to tremble. For Claire, it began quietly, a feeling more than a fact, the smallest fracture in something that once felt unbreakable. Their honeymoon had ended. The world had stopped applauding. The flowers had wilted, leaving only the echo of perfection behind. Now it was just the two of them, husband and wife, inside a mansion that looked more like a museum than a home. At first, the silence felt peaceful. Then it began to feel heavy. Alexander had become distant. Late-night phone calls, business trips that appeared out of nowhere, conversations that ended the moment she entered the room. When she asked who was calling, he smiled, that same careful, practiced smile, and said, "No one important." But no one important doesn't call 3 times after midnight. No one important doesn't make a man's voice drop when he answers. One night, she followed the sound of murmured words down the long hallway. His office door was slightly open, the light leaking out like a secret begging to be seen. Inside, Alexander's tone was sharp, unfamiliar. He wasn't the man she knew in those moments. He was commanding, cold. Then silence. The kind that only comes when someone knows they're being watched. "Claire," he said softly from behind the door, "you should be asleep." She smiled, pretending calm. "I couldn't. The storm." He kissed her forehead, his lips cool. "Don't worry about me. Just go back to bed." She did, but she didn't sleep. Days passed. The mansion's beauty began to suffocate her. Rooms felt too wide, too empty. Shadows stretched longer than they should. She began noticing things, papers left half hidden, receipts from places he claimed never to have been, a locked door at the end of the West Hall. When she asked about it, his answer came too quickly. "Storage, nothing you'd care about." He laughed it off, kissed her, and changed the subject. But the question stayed. That night, while he slept, she crept down the hallway, barefoot. The marble was cold beneath her feet. The door was colder still. She turned the handle, locked. She pressed her ear against it. Silence. But there was something on the other side. She could feel it. The kind of silence that hides a heartbeat. The next morning, she found a photograph tucked between the pages of a book on his desk. It was old, black and white. Alexander, younger, rougher, standing beside a man she didn't recognize. On the back, a single name written in fading ink, Daniel Cross. She stared at it for a long time. The name meant nothing, yet everything felt wrong. When she asked him about it that night, he froze, only for a second, but she saw it, the flicker in his eyes, the instinct to lie before the words even formed. "An old friend," he said softly, slipping the photo from her hand. He never put it back. From that day on, Claire began watching him differently. The way he avoided certain questions, the way his phone disappeared whenever she entered the room, the way he said, "I love you," like a man trying to convince himself it was still true. Would you confront your partner or keep pretending everything was fine? Would you rather destroy the illusion or live inside it just a little longer? Claire told herself she was imagining things, that love needed faith, not suspicion. But faith is fragile when shadows begin to grow. And late one evening, as the rain returned, she stood before the locked door again, her reflection trembling in the brass handle. Behind that door waited the truth, and though she didn't yet know it, it was already beginning to seep through the cracks. Because sometimes the heart's desire blinds us to what the eyes already see. There's a moment somewhere between love and denial when curiosity becomes survival. For Claire, that moment arrived on a night when the world felt too still to be trusted. Alexander had left again. Another meeting, another late call with no explanation. But this time, something in his voice cracked. Not anger, not fear. Something smaller, a tremor, like guilt trying to breathe. She waited until his taillights vanished down the drive. Then she grabbed her coat. The sky was bleeding gray, clouds heavy and low. The city stretched out before her, familiar yet distant. She followed him. He didn't take the highway. Instead, his car weaved through back roads, into the outskirts, where the streetlights flickered and the air grew colder. Claire's heart kept time with the windshield wipers, every beat, every turn, whispering a single question. Who are you, really? After nearly an hour, his car stopped at an old villa, half hidden by ivy and rain. The windows were dark. The gate hung crooked, creaking as the wind touched it. He stepped out, his face shadowed by the brim of his coat, and then he disappeared inside. Claire waited, 5 minutes, then 10. The cold seeped into her bones. Finally, she pushed open the gate and stepped inside. The villa smelled of dust and damp wood. The walls were lined with old portraits, faces blurred by time. A single lamp flickered in the corner, its light revealing a desk buried under stacks of paper. She moved closer, her breath trembling. Documents, photographs, bank slips, names she didn't recognize. And there, passports, not 1, not 2, but 5, each with a different name, different country, same face. One passport bore his wedding photo, her and Alexander on their honeymoon, but the name beneath it read Daniel Cross. She froze. The words didn't make sense at first. They just echoed over and over until sound itself became meaningless. Then she saw the newspaper clippings pinned to the wall. Old headlines, yellowed and curling at the edges. Cross Corporation collapses amid scandal. Heir disappears following financial fraud investigation. Daniel Cross wanted for questioning. Claire's breath caught. Her hands trembled as she pieced the truth together. The man she loved, the man she married, didn't exist. Alexander Gray was a name he built, a mask carved from lies and money. Behind it stood Daniel Cross, the son of a fallen empire, a man who had run from his past until he believed his own disguise. In the flicker of that dim light, Claire's world collapsed, not in fire, but in silence, the kind of silence that follows betrayal. She wanted to scream, but even her own voice felt foreign now. She picked up one more photo, a boy no older than 10, with Alexander's eyes, but softer, innocent. She realized then that the man she loved had buried himself so deeply, even he no longer remembered that boy. Daniel Cross, 1993. Is love still love if it's built on a lie? If every kiss, every promise, every word was spoken by a stranger wearing the face of someone you trusted, what does that make the love you felt? Claire gathered the papers, trembling hands pressing against the truth. She knew she should run, call someone, anyone, but she couldn't move, because somewhere beneath the horror was grief. The grief of realizing the man who deceived her had still somehow made her feel seen. He's back. Her breath catches. Footsteps approach outside. The door handle turns. She hides behind the curtain, heart pounding so loud she swears he can hear it. Alexander, or Daniel, walks in, rain dripping from his coat. He looks around, as if sensing her presence. Then he stops. He sees the open drawer, the scattered papers, the photo missing from the wall. His jaw tightens, his eyes darken. Thunder crashes, silence follows. In that instant, she knows there's no going back. The man she thought she married has vanished, and in his place stands a stranger who's just realized the past he tried to bury has finally been unearthed. The storm roars, and the story, once golden, turns to shadow. Rain lashes against windows. Thunder rumbles, deep, distant, like the earth holding its breath. There's a moment when silence becomes louder than any scream. That's how it felt inside the villa. Two lives collapsing under the weight of truth. Claire stood frozen, hidden in the corner, her heart pounding hard enough to shake the air itself. She watched him move slowly through the room, his shadow stretching across the floor like a confession made visible. He touched the open drawer, the papers, the missing photograph. His breath caught, and in that small sound, she heard everything. Guilt, fear, recognition. The storm outside swells. Lightning flashes once. When she finally stepped out of the shadows, his name escaped her lips. Quiet, fragile, Daniel. Everything stops. The wind, the music, even time. He turned, not sharply, but slowly, as if the word itself had broken something inside him. For a second, he didn't speak. He just stared. Rain traced lines down his face, half sorrow, half relief. "You weren't supposed to find this," he said softly. Claire's voice trembled. "You lied to me. Everything, all of this, it's built on a lie." He took a step closer, his voice cracking. "It wasn't a lie, Claire. Not the way I loved you." But love, she realized, was the first casualty of deception. "Then who are you?" she whispered. "Who did I marry?" Thunder rolls, louder now. The wind howls through broken windows. He closed his eyes, exhaling the truth like a man finally surrendering to gravity. "My name is Daniel Cross. My father, he ruined everything. The company, the family. We lost everything. And when they came for me, I ran." He looked up at her, raw, stripped of charm. "I changed my name because I didn't want to live in his shadow. I didn't want you to look at me and see him." Claire's eyes glistened with disbelief. You let me fall in love with someone who doesn't exist. I wanted a clean slate, he said, stepping closer. I wanted you before the world told you who I was. Lightning flash, thunder follows immediately. For a moment, their voices rose above the storm, not in anger, but pain. Every word between them cut like glass. He pleaded for understanding. She begged for truth. You could have told me, she said, tears breaking free. You should have trusted me. He shook his head, voice trembling. If I had, you would have walked away. Everyone always does. You didn't give me the chance, she whispered. He reached for her hand. She stepped back. And in that step, everything changed. The storm peaks, wind roaring through the cracks of the villa, papers swirling in the air like ghosts of every lie he told. They stood there, two people who once shared the same heartbeat, now separated by the truth that was supposed to set them free. So I ask, dear listener, would you walk away or hear his side of the story? When love becomes the crime, is forgiveness weakness or the only form of survival? Claire didn't answer him, not with words. She walked past him, toward the door, the paper still clutched in her hand. He didn't follow. He couldn't. For the first time, Alexander Gray or Daniel Cross was alone. Not running, not lying, just alone. Outside, she stood beneath the storm, her wedding ring heavy, her heart hollow. Somewhere behind her, the lights of the villa went out, and with them, the illusion of the life she thought she had. And yet, beneath the heartbreak, a question lingered in her chest. Was the man she loved gone, or had he just been found? The night she left, the world didn't stop. It simply forgot to care. The city still shined, the sky still moved, but for Claire, time broke into pieces, too small to measure, too heavy to carry. The mansion behind her stood still, grand, lifeless, stripped of warmth. The halls that once echoed with laughter now sounded like a museum of ghosts. Every photograph, every perfume-stained pillow, every trace of his voice felt like an echo she couldn't silence. When she walked out, she didn't take the jewelry or the dresses or the ring. She only took her sketchbook, the one thing untouched by his lies. For days, she stayed in her old apartment, the one above the flower shop where her story began. The air smelled of wilted roses and dust. It wasn't comfort she found there, it was honesty. Painful, raw, but honest. Meanwhile, the empire he built, or borrowed, began to crumble. The news broke first on morning television. Alexander Gray, identity fraud, tax evasion, criminal investigation underway. His fortune, his name, his legacy, all collapsing in front of the same world that once called him untouchable. The headlines called him a liar. The world called him a fraud. But Claire didn't call him anything. She turned off the TV and went back to her sketches. It wasn't revenge she wanted. It wasn't pity. It was silence, the kind that allows the truth to breathe. Weeks passed. The season shifted. The leaves burned red, then fell, one by one, like everything else that used to mean something. Claire began sewing again, not for luxury clients, not for fame, but for herself. Her designs were different now, Less glitter, more substance. Less perfection, more story. Every gown carried a wound. Every stitch carried survival. Slowly, people began to notice. Her pieces felt alive, real, as if they were speaking to the same broken hearts that once whispered behind her back. And soon, her name, not his, began to rise. But even with success returning, the silence stayed. Not empty, sacred. At night, she would sit by her window, sketching under the pale light, wondering if he ever thought of her, if he ever regretted not telling her the truth before the world forced it out of him. They say time heals all wounds, but that's not true. Time doesn't heal. It only teaches you how to carry the scar. Can trust ever truly be rebuilt once it's been shattered? Or do we just learn to live among the broken pieces, calling it healing, when really it's just endurance? Claire didn't have the answer, but she had something close to it: peace. Not the kind that comes from forgiveness, the kind that comes from knowing she survived. Months passed. Her designs spread across magazines again. Invitations, interviews, whispers of the woman who built beauty from heartbreak. But she stayed quiet, working late into the night, the hum of the city below her, a reminder that life had moved on. And yet, somewhere inside her, a question lingered, not out of love, out of closure. Where was he now? Because love doesn't vanish when truth breaks it. It just changes shape, from something that holds you to something that haunts you. Time has a cruel way of softening the things we thought we'd forgotten. Months had passed since the truth came undone. Claire's world, once shattered, had started to heal, carefully, quietly. Her designs filled the pages of magazines again. Critics called her a storyteller in silk. Clients called her a visionary. She called it survival. But some nights, when the city fell silent, she could still hear his voice. Not in words, in echoes. The way he used to say her name like it was fragile. The way he looked at her before the lie unraveled everything. It was an early evening in October when he came back. No chauffeur, no tailored suit, no watch that cost more than time itself. Just a man standing in the rain, hands trembling, eyes hollow from years that felt longer than they were. Claire opened the door and froze. He looked nothing like the man she'd married. The arrogance was gone, the confidence replaced by quiet. Even his voice had changed, softer, unsure. "Claire," he said, just her name, as if saying it might undo the distance between them. She didn't speak, didn't move, just watched him, the way you watch a memory walk out of a dream. He told her he had nothing left. The company was gone. The lawyers had taken what was left of the fortune. The papers said he fled, but he didn't. He stayed, working under another name, somewhere far from the noise. "I didn't come to ask for anything," he said. "I just needed you to know. I finally understand what I destroyed." His eyes found hers, steady, unguarded. "I thought I could build a new life out of lies, but the truth found me. It always does." Claire wanted to hate him, to slam the door, to end the story right there. But the heart has its own memory, one that logic can't rewrite. She let him in, just for a moment. He told her he'd been working in a small factory, sewing leather bags by hand. No luxury, no name, just work. It felt good, he said, to create something real again. She nodded, but said nothing. The silence between them spoke more than any apology could. It was almost poetic that the night he returned, the fire came. One of her assistants screamed from the back of the studio, "Smoke!" Within minutes, the place that had become her rebirth was burning. Claire tried to grab her sketches, her fabric rolls, her mannequins, anything she could save. But the smoke was thick, black, merciless. And then hands pulled her back, strong, familiar. "Leave it," he shouted. "I'll get them." It was Daniel, rushing into the blaze without hesitation, without fear. He didn't think of himself, only her work, her dream, the thing that had saved her when he couldn't. When he emerged, his shirt was torn, his hands burned, but he was holding a charred box, the one that held her original designs. He fell to his knees outside, coughing, gasping for air. She knelt beside him, tears streaming down her face. "Why," she whispered, "after everything, why would you do that?" He looked up at her, eyes raw, voice hoarse. "Because I couldn't save the life I destroyed, but maybe I could save the dream you built from it." They sat there, in the rain, surrounded by smoke and ashes, the past smoldering behind them, the future still uncertain. For the first time in months, Claire didn't see the liar or the millionaire. She saw the man. If someone changed for love, would you give them a second chance? If the person who broke you came back to rebuild what they destroyed, would you let them? In that rain-soaked silence, no one spoke of forgiveness. No one asked for it. It simply existed, like the smoke fading into the night. Sometimes redemption doesn't arrive with grand gestures. Sometimes it's just two people sitting in the rain, realizing that even broken hearts can still recognize each other. The fire was weeks ago. The smoke had cleared, the ashes swept away, but something lingered, the kind of quiet that comes when two lives finally run out of things to hide behind. Claire hadn't seen him since that night. He didn't ask to stay, and she didn't ask him to leave. They simply existed in separate silences, his filled with regret, hers with questions that no longer needed answers. One morning, as winter began to touch the city again, a letter arrived at her studio. No name on the front, only her initials written in familiar handwriting. Inside, just a few words. "If you'll see me, the park, noon." No expectations. She sat with the letter for hours, tracing the lines of his pen strokes, feeling the weight of what it meant to let go. Or to look back. When she finally went, the park looked almost the same as the day she'd first met him at the gala. Quiet, gilded by winter light. The kind of day that doesn't promise anything, but offers peace if you're ready for it. He was sitting on a bench by the fountain, wearing a simple coat. No guards, no car, no mask. Just him, Daniel, stripped down to the truth. For a long moment, they didn't speak. The air between them was heavy with what had been lost and what little might still be saved. Then she said, softly, "You always said you wanted to start over." He looked up, eyes tired but calm. "I did, but I thought I needed to erase everything to do it. I was wrong." She sat beside him. The fountain's water rippled with every breath of wind, catching the faint sunlight like shards of glass. There was no anger in her voice now, only acceptance. "You can't rewrite the past, Daniel," she said. "You can only live with it. That's what I've been doing." He nodded. "And can you live with me in it?" She looked at him for a long moment, searching the face she'd once known so well. The man who'd lied, the man who'd loved, the man who'd burned, and then saved her world. And in the quiet, she found her answer, not in words, but in the way her heart didn't ache anymore. "I forgive you," she said. "Not because you deserve it," she continued, voice trembling, "but because I deserve peace. He closed his eyes, and for the first time, she saw him breathe, truly breathe, as though the weight he'd carried for years finally fell away. They didn't speak after that. There were no grand gestures, no promises, just two people sitting side by side, letting silence become forgiveness. In the weeks that followed, they found each other again, not as they were, but as who they had become. He found honest work, repairing furniture in a small shop by the river. She kept designing, her new line simple, graceful, free from the glitter that once blinded her. They lived quietly, no cameras, no gold, just mornings of coffee and sketches, evenings of laughter that didn't need to prove anything. And though the world never forgot the scandal, Claire never mentioned it again, because in her heart, she understood. Some stories aren't about perfection. They're about endurance, redemption, and the kind of love that survives the truth. Would you choose truth and simplicity, or the illusion of a perfect life? Would you trade the glitter for peace, the lie for something fragile but real? In the end, she didn't marry a millionaire. She married the man behind the mask. And for the first time in a long time, both of them could finally sleep without pretending.
Love, trust, redemption. 3 words that sound simple until you have to live them. Claire and Daniel's story reminds us that truth, no matter how painful, is always the quiet thread that holds love together. So now, I'll leave you with one question. If love asked you to forgive the unforgivable, would you do it? Or would you choose to protect your heart, even if it meant never feeling that kind of love again? Thank you for spending your time inside this story. More tales are on the way, each one stitched from the same fabric of love, loss, and the search for truth. Until then, keep listening and keep feeling.